Hello viewers, you're welcome to this edition of Street Smart Lab Business Show. If there is anything aspiring business owners or existing business owners desire, certainly it is that they will have smooth business operations with little or no challenges. We have put together in this edition ideas that would help entrepreneurs thrive in their endeavors. This is to guarantee excellent implementation and growth that will help to build the corporation that can last. Joining me in the discussion today is Mr. Samuel Nwanze. He is the Executive Director and Chief Financial Officer at Hess Holding Oil and Gas Limited. He was the Director, Finance and Investment at Hess Holding, a leading investment company that focuses on long-term investment across Africa. He also served as Chief Investment Officer and Acting CEO of Ten Oil, which owns and manages ATA Marginal Field and OPL 2008. He also worked on a number of green and brownfield investments and projects that cut across oil and gas, agriculture, hospitality, impact investments, and many more. Most of his work has been done in various markets across Africa, but he has also been involved in projects and investments in the US, the UK, and India. He's definitely the expert we should be talking to about investment and financing in business. You can drop your questions and comments, and we'll try and attempt them in the next edition of the show. Join me as I welcome him on board in our discussion. Hello, Sam. Thank you for joining me today, and you're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so to start with, I think it's just important, especially for those who might just be aspiring to start and own a business. What would we say? How do you put together the ideas surrounding financing and funding for businesses? Can you just help us define that and put it in the right perspective for business owners to have a good understanding?
Thanks a lot, Ade, for that question. I think from my experience, I've been heavily involved in trying to find funding for businesses, small scale, large scale, and also been involved in looking at businesses with the intention of putting money into them from an investment point of view. And there are three things I say are important for success in business. I know people teach about many things, but there are three important things amongst the many things. And I said number one is don't run out of cash. And number two is make sure you don't run out of cash. And number three is never forget rules 1 and rule 2. And the reason I say so is cash is extremely important for the survival of any business. It's the lifeblood. That's what runs through the veins of any business. At the moment it stops flowing, that business starts dying. So funding is an extremely important aspect of how any entrepreneur should look at his business and how they view the success of that business beyond the initial period, way into whatever stage that business is in. So I think the topic we are discussing today is extremely important from that perspective for people to understand how to look at funding, how cash is important with respect to how their business can survive, and the kind of things they need to do to be able to get there.
Wow, that's awesome. Like you mentioned, people talk about many things that would help your business to survive. But these three things that you have highlighted, interestingly, the three things are talking about the same thing, that make sure you don't run out of cash, make sure you don't forget number one, make sure you make sure number one and two, you know, they are very, very, very important things that we need to consider in business. So it's obvious business needs funding and good funding. So if I may ask, what are the sources of funding that you, by your experience, that you know are available to businesses? Because you know, people have these challenges here, and they talk about they've attempted this, they've heard that they should go about this, they should do this, and it seems as though it's an endless journey about financing in business. So what are the sources that you can?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So sometimes people mix up sources of funding with types of funding. So I'll just try and make that distinction. So in terms of your sources of funding, there are two broad categories from where you can get funding for your business. One is broad categories, I say. One is internal, and the other is external. People don't often realize, or many businesses don't realize, that you can actually, if you focus on the internal aspect of funding your business, you can actually, it's actually the easiest or the quickest or the simplest way of how you fund your business. Now, internal sources of funding, there are a number of them. One of them is what we call spontaneous financing, and what that means is it's just a play on how you manage your cash inflows and your cash outflows. If you think of your business as a cash pot, and if you follow the first point I made, where I said ensuring that your business is, you know, cash flow, cash is king as far as your business is concerned, you can think of it from a perspective of the way to manage your cash is to manage how cash comes in and increase your ability to get cash into the business, and then manage how cash goes out and reduce as much as you can the mode in which your cash kind of like goes out. So one broad category is looking at spontaneous financing, where you manage that dynamic between cash in and cash out. People call it working capital management. How do I manage monies that are due to the business outside that needs to come in? And how do I manage how quickly I get cash out of the business? So that's one form of an internal source of funding. Another example of an internal source of funding is your retained earnings. Many businesses, when they make money, businesses always have good times and bad times. People always remember the bad times because it's usually most difficult periods. But there are also good times. And what you do with cash when you have a good period is instrumental to how you can find funding for your business on a go-forward basis. So the concept of managing your retained earnings, you know, when you make money, seeing how much of that money you retain in the business in order for your business to continue to grow. That's another form of internal financing. Another form is maybe your personal savings as an entrepreneur. And timing how, based on your commitment and your belief for the business, timing how you invest your own funds into the business whenever the business has a cash situation. Another example is looking at your business as a whole and determining what you need and what you don't need. Oftentimes, businesses, at a certain stage in your business, you may accumulate certain assets that were important for the business at a point in time. But there may be times in your business when those assets are no longer important. So looking at things like asset sales, asset disposals, in order for you to be able to generate cash. So those are internal sources, and there are a couple of other examples. But then there are also external sources of financing, which people often quickly think about when they think about financing for the business. And for the external sources of financing, I will put them in three broad categories. So one is there's what we call public or concessionary type financing, which looks at concessionary finance, like a concessionary debt from the government, for example, where they dedicate certain funds, focus on certain sectors to help find cash, to get cash to flow there. There are a number of those things in the market. People are not often aware, but it's a source of external financing. Another example is grants, for example. There are a number of philanthropic funding that is focused on solving problems in certain areas. If your business is addressing those kind of problems, you can probably tap into those kind of financing. Again, people don't often know that those things exist, but they do. Another source is what we call in entrepreneurship, friends, families, and fools, where you tap into funding from people who know you, who they believe in you, and they want to support what you're doing. Building that relationship and being able to tap into those kind of pools of capital is also one. So that's one category. So and this kind of capital or this kind of funding is usually concessionary in nature. They are not breathing down your nose in terms of interest and payback and all of that, but they are mission-focused type funding that you can tap into. A second category of external funding is what people popularly know as debt, and I use the term debt and not loans because not all debt is loans. Loan is a form of debt, but there are other forms. And there are a couple of sources there. I mean, you could look at traditional banks. Nowadays, for smaller businesses, there are windows with lending groups, microfinance banks, finance houses, and all of that. You could look at the nature of the kind of debt that is being provided. Loans is what people immediately think of, but there are other forms of debt. You can look at leases if you want to, for example, get equipment for your business. You can look at factoring, where you have a client that you've done something for, but they are meant to pay you at some time in the future. There are finance houses who can look at that client and give you the cash you need now, and then they take the money for it. So that's also a form of debt. There are other forms of debt, but that's the second category. And then the third category, in terms of sources, would be, again, what people normally know as equity. And equity sources, again, friends, families, and foes are good sources of equity. Your own personal savings is a good source of equity. There are venture capital funds, there's angel financing, there's private equity. There are a number of sources or places where you go to identify. There's even crowdfunding, which can come in form of either debt or equity, which are more modern ways of being able to source capital. So there are a number of those buckets: internal, external, and then different things in between.
Okay, fantastic. You started with saying the difference between the sources of funding and
the types.
The types.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So I love the way you have put them. In all of this, what can we say is the missing link for business owners? Where you mentioned so much. It's as though you want to start a business, you don't have a problem. You can just easily, look at these options and pick one and you are fine. But the challenges of funding is over and over again is just there. So what's the missing link for business owners?
I mean, that's a great question. There are many things, and it's one of those questions where I'll try and see if I can put them into categories that can help. So one thing that is important when you're looking for money is this concept of what value are you creating. So if you go back and look at what money is about, money, the concept of money itself is when people talk about money today, they think about cash, they think about, a currency that they need. But if you go back to the origins of money itself, money itself is just a medium for exchanging something. Money in and of itself has no value. If I pick a piece of 1,000 naira today, it's paper. If I throw it into fire, it will burn. If I rip it, it will get torn. In and of itself has no value. It's a medium for exchanging something. And therefore, it means for you to attract money, you must have something that you are bringing. And that is the concept of value. The value is a magnet for money. If you can demonstrate through your idea or through your business, how you are going to create value, you will attract money that is chasing that value. So oftentimes when people think about their businesses, especially when you talk to young entrepreneurs or people who are starting out, they are carried away with the euphoria of their idea or how excited they are about the concept. But you need to be able to move that concept you have to a point where you can demonstrate how that concept is creating value. Once you are able to get to that point, you are moving your business towards what we will call a bankability point. To the point where somebody can see the value and then it becomes a magnet for money. Yeah, so that's one concept. And under all of that, there are a number of things that businesses need to understand. So, how do you articulate your strategy or your business plan in a way and manner that people can relate to it and understand it? There are tools, the number of things we can talk around that. How do you build your business in a way and manner that it gives the sense to whoever is attracting money that their money is safe? So you're talking about governance, which many businesses ignore today, but fail to realize that without that element, people will, be weary about giving you money. Your understanding of your market, the environment, risk, and understanding how to mitigate risks that are inherent in the business. So there are a number of things you need to do around getting your business from just a concept or an idea to the point where it's a demonstration of value and it can attract capital. Then the other thing you also need to look at is what kind of capital, what kind of funding do I need given where my business is at a point in time? If we go into the different types of funding, we talked about sources of funding: banks, finance houses, friends, family, fools, your personal savings, and all of that. But if you move a bit more towards the types of funding, there are three broad categories you can think about. There is the debt, which I mentioned is a type of funding. There's equity, and there's what we call everything in between. Yeah, just for simplicity, we call it everything in between debt and equity. Now, for each of those types of funding, they require specific types of things. And if you are going to attract that type of funding, you need to look at your business first and say, is my business, what are those things that type of funding require, and how is my business, or how do I put my business in a position to attract that type of funding? So a good example is debt, or let me simply put loans, for easy understanding. Now, what is it? What is a loan? What is a debt? It's an obligation. You have a loan is an instrument where you have a legal obligation to repay the amount that was given to you over a period of time, and it also attracts a cost, which is what we will call interest. Yeah. Some of the basic principles and fundamentals around being able to get loans are that, number one, you must be able to show that the business has what they call capacity. There is and I encourage everyone to go and read up the 5 C's of credit. It's the secret. It's out there, but people don't often realize the 5 C's of credit. Any lender, I used to be in banking, and I worked in credit. Any lender, once you bring a proposal for a loan, they have to tick certain boxes. If they cannot tick those boxes, they can't give you the loan. And your understanding of what those boxes are and how you structure your business or your business opportunity to be able to get them to tick those boxes increases your chances of getting the loan. So one of it is the business you are presenting forward must be able to show clearly that it is either currently generating cash flow or is very close to generating cash flow. You can't use loans to fund a business where you are just trying to develop the concept. You have killed that business in the first place. In fact, first of all, it will only be a silly person or a stupid person who will give you a loan for that. And if the person does, he's only doing it from a perspective of wanting to take over that idea from you further down the line, because you have a legal obligation to repay, and the person has a right to take over your business if you don't repay. So you often go for debt type funding when you have cash flow generating. The business is actually already generating cash, and you can leverage that cash to get more to grow the business, or the business is very close to generating cash. You could look at equity type funding. On the other hand, there is no legal obligation to repay. Somebody who, puts equity in your business is taking the same risk that the business owner is taking, and the person takes that risk because equity is supposed to generate a lot more return. Your interest is not fixed. I mean, your return is not fixed to an interest rate. It is multiple. It can come in form of dividends, and also how the business grows over time. And so they take more risk. So for those kinds of places where your business is not at the point where they're generating cash flow, but you need cash for you to help for the business to develop the concept up to the point where you can get to cash flow, then you should be looking at equity type funding, concessionary type capital that we mentioned earlier on, grants, government debt, and all of that, as a source of funding. And then I mentioned that there's everything in between debt and equity. If you think of a continuum, there's debt on one end, equity on one end. There's a lot of things in between. There are many things you can do to be able to attract funding. And sometimes you could go to people, they may not take equity in your business, but they can see a business idea that you are pursuing that is near to cash, and you can do a profit share arrangement. Say, if you give me this money to fund the business, I generate this return. When we generate the return, we share it XX. Profit sharing is a type of funding in between. You can do what is called convertible debts, where you take a loan from somebody, but because you're not generating cash now, you push your repayment of that debt to a period where they can either convert that loan into equity in the future or get paid out. So it gives you breathing space in the period where you're not generating cash to use that money for funding, and then you have an option at the end of a period where that money can either be converted to equity in the business or to debt at the based on the terms you agree now. And there are various other things in between. I think the creativity of the entrepreneur to identify and understand his business well, and to find out what are the other things I can do that is not necessarily full equity or necessarily full debt, to structure to be able to generate funding into my business. So I think that's how we capture that point.
Wow, great, awesome. We couldn't have bargained and desire to have more explanations to this. In fact, I love the fact that you took it further. You explained at which point of the business, the phase of the business, should one be considering what kind of funding, best suits that business flow at that time. So you are not running for the kind of funding that you should be looking for when you're already generating money, right? You are not also pursuing or even giving out too much of your business when at that moment it's obvious that the business does not even need the kind of funding you want to really pursue because of being desperate, or maybe you are not knowledgeable about what can help. It's obvious that we need to take this discussion further and possibly maybe talk a bit more about the depth that you talked about, tilting towards the loan that seems to be much more popular, that people are familiar with, and maybe you want to expose our minds to other things, along those areas. So we'll be taking that discussion further, and maybe in terms of investment. But before we round up this particular session for this edition now, I would want to ask, what would you say, what would be your advice, what would you propose to business owners as they seek or desire to get their business funded, or aspiring business owner to get their business funded, no matter the phase which they are about to start, they've started, or they are at the point where they feel that I should just be doing better than this, but it seems as though things around it at this moment are not just helping. What would you propose or say to business owners as we wrap up this session?
Yeah, I mean, I have a session I did, I think it's somewhere online, I'm not sure, on trying to address this question, where the question was, how can I as a business get you, that's speaking to me as an investor, to give me money. And basically saying what are the things I look out for me to say I need to put money in this business. There are a number of them, but I'll just talk about some of the big ones as they come to my mind. So number one, I had mentioned this before. One of the important things for me is that you are able to demonstrate how your business creates value. As simple as that sounds, from my experience looking at many entrepreneurs who come to seek for funds, you find that they've not really thought it through. What you find is people are very excited about an idea, and ideas are great. They're actually the starting point, but ideas are not sufficient to attract capital. Anybody can have an idea. Yeah, they may interest people, but they may not necessarily attract capital. You need to be able to move that idea to a point where you can say, you can show me or show whoever you are trying to attract for funding how that idea will create value. That's one. The second thing is, in order for you to attract money, to make a provider of capital want to put money into your business, you have to give the sense that your business is a safe place for one to put money into. People want to invest or put money into businesses where they can get their money back with a return. And so if you are not able to structure your business in a way and manner that it is safe to take external money, you won't get external money. It will be difficult for people to give you money. And how do you make your business a safe place to put money? There are two main things you need to consider. Number one is you have to think about governance. And I know many businesses don't really think governance is important. But honestly, if I'm going to put money into any business and I don't feel that the business has systems or structures in place to ensure that money is properly monitored and managed, then it will be a no-no to put business in. So you have to look at your governance system. What processes, what systems, policies do you have that guide the way the business operates? Is the business built around the core owner such that if that guy disappears, money is gone? Is he the only decision maker? Is there a maker checker system? There are certain things you have to build into your business to make sure that that governance is clear. The second thing as relates to safety is risk. You must be able to understand the risk in your business, the risks in your business, and identify mitigating factors. Because if I see a risk and you haven't thought of it, or you haven't thought of how you could possibly address that risk, then it's not an encouraging point for me to put money into your business. Third thing I will mention is, ultimately, when people give money to businesses, they are giving money to people. Yeah, I always say this in my role as Chief Investment Officer in Hess Holdings. The first thing I look at outside of, or the next thing I look at outside of the ability of that business to create value is who are the people behind the business. Yeah, because at the end of the day, you are giving money to a group of people to manage on your behalf. And the character of the individuals, their track record, their competence level, capacity, become an important aspect. So you being able to demonstrate that is important. Now, all these elements I've mentioned, and there are a couple more, but because of time, I won't go into that. When you are making your proposal to somebody to give you money for your business, if you are able to structure in your proposal elements that show how you create value, and remember, creating value is not necessarily how the business makes money. Yeah, money will be attracted by value. Is what are you dealing with? What are you solving? And making that very clear, and how that feeds into a market. Yeah. So if you're able to show that, able to show how you have built robustness around governance and risk, and you're able to tell the story of your management team or you yourself, the people behind who are going to be the custodians of the capital I'm giving, and a couple of other things which we can't talk about, then you are moving closer and closer towards making it interesting for providers of capital to put money into the business.
That's I can't thank you enough for this expository, these very robust responses to the things that surrounds funding and financing in businesses. They've been real challenging things that most business owners have come in contact with, and you have just simplified them. You have made us to realize that things can be better. We can get things sorted out much easier if we move from the point of ignorance about how things operate, and we get to the point where we, based on knowledge and information, those in the decisions we are taking are now decisions based on key elements of things that would take our businesses to the right point. So thank you so much for the time on the show. In this episode, we'll be looking forward to more engagements with you to take this discussion further, like I said earlier. And to our viewers, thanks so much also for being part of the show today. I want to appreciate you for the time. Before you go, please, if you are not a subscriber, please click the subscribe button so that you can be notified as we have more of these videos and more of these information teachings coming out to help you in your business, or to help you to put things in the right perspective as you plan towards starting your business. You can follow us on all social media handles at Street Smart Lab, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Facebook. We have a page, we have also a group, a forum there where you can be able to go and check. And we also have a website, streetsmartlab.com, a very rich and robust site where we're having contributions from industry experts that will be speaking to your needs, speaking to entrepreneurs, speaking to those key elements and areas and things that would help your business, right? At Street Smart Lab, we say that everything that we do is to ensure that the businesses don't just remain the same. So we'll be signing off at this point until we'll come your way next time. I am Adeyiga Awomuti. Thank you so much once again, Mr. Samuel Nwanze, towards the smartest you.